Welcome, Darren.
Thank you.
Lovely to have
Welcome. Thank you.
you here. Amazing. Darren, shall we start with a little introduction about you and how long you've been in property management? Where do you work? What do you do? What's your passion? Just talk to me about your experience in property management and obviously how long you've been in.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I would say that
Mm.
my property management experience spans about 20 years, but that's not all block management. That spans closer to 5 years. My dad started as an estate agent in 2004 when I was in secondary school, which is kind of giving away my age. And then since then, all my summer holidays and my half terms and my everything was consumed there. And after graduating university, I did some more property management for a high net worth individual before returning to my family business in about 2013. I did that for about 10 years. When I started to transition into block management, one of our clients owned a couple of buildings and he liked working with me as an individual and he wanted me he wasn't doing it well. He didn't know the law. He was, he was a kind of Jack the Lad person from Brixton who just didn't know what he was doing. So he asked me to get involved. I started doing some courses and learning about the industry and the legislation. And I actually decided that I preferred block management. Uh, so then I began to transition then and I started working for HMO in about 2013 November. And I've been here
Mm.
since. I'm a senior property manager here. You asked me what is my passion? My passion is to do things better than expected, to be proactive, to be transparent, and to get thank yous. I think a lot of people say that this is a thankless industry where if you do the work, then people are quiet, and if you don't, they complain. But I think there is a nuance there that if you exceed expectations, then people will recognize it because it's a very busy industry with high workload and
Yeah,
so many hats to juggle and so many. We're meant to be generalists. We're meant to know everything and handle everything and respond to 200 emails every day. But I think
yeah,
if we're doing things well, then people will thank us for it.
absolutely. And I mentioned your passion because obviously you're posting a lot of great posts on LinkedIn. So that was why I mentioned your passion because it seems to be very passionate about the industry and you have an opinion, which is great.
Yeah, so I think I haven't been active on LinkedIn for very long. I joined in maybe 2015, but I didn't have any connections until maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And as I'm getting more engaged in my organization and in the industry in general, I just thought I'll just share my thoughts online and get engagement and speak to people and learn from them. Because we're always learners. There's always more to learn. And through reaching out to people like yourself, you learn from one another and actually learn how to do things better.
Absolutely. I so agree. And you've mentioned also earlier that you get like 200 emails and how do you juggle that? It's
So
difficult.
if I'm more specific, I would say that on average, maybe I'll get 60 to 70 emails a day. Um, I think it's time blocking really. So if you're always looking at every ping, then you're never going to get any deep work done. So for me, I block some time in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening just to go through emails. And yeah, so we also at my company have ChatGPT, but it's a branded one, so we can actually put in the sensitive information, and it doesn't go to their servers. So what I've been doing
Mhm.
recently is you can actually copy and paste email chains into the ChatGPT, and it actually summarizes it. So you can just copy paste, summarize these emails, take out the action points that are assigned to Darren or to HML, and then it'll just summarize the email. You can tell it to do in chronological order. Obviously, there are mistakes, so you can't be reliant and dependent on it to do your job for you. But if you need to get through a lot of things quickly, it can be quite helpful.
Do you use it more for like admin? Because obviously that is what takes most of our days, isn't it? It's admin correspondence between
Yes.
contractors and so on.
So, so my main use here is actually getting through lots of information in a short amount of time. So just to give you an example, this morning one of the clients wanted to add a director, and he was asking, what does the memorandum and articles of association say about adding somebody? And I can just download the memorandum, put it into the AI, and say, what does it say? And then I can say, quote it, or where does it reference this? So I don't need to go through 20, 30 pages. It can quickly identify where it is and summarize it. And I can say, explain this in layman's terms, and then it's explained in layman's terms for the client. So I think mostly using it to just make going through a lot of information very quick.
Amazing. I think you just need to convert them, right? That's like the leases. You just need to convert them into JPEGs, or how does it work with
No,
that?
so you can just drop the PDF file into it.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna try that.
yeah, I think it's very important in this day and age. I think the barrier to success is often technology, because if we can do things at a third of the time, we get two-thirds of our time back. So if we're trying to find out where does it say in the lease, can they have a dog or not, or do they need consent, you can just drop it, and in 10 seconds, it's read the whole lease and identified it for you. Obviously, there are flaws. For example, it might not get the scheduling right. It might not understand what schedule is on what. So you have to be careful. And obviously, you need to check, because it does make mistakes. But I think it can be a useful tool just to streamline our work processes.
No, absolutely. I'm a big fan of AI and ChatGPT, and anything that can save my time a little bit. Yes, as you said. So prompting it's very I think it's very important how you prompt the questions or what you're looking for, and then you've got to read it. You can't just send it, right? So you still have to check. That is good that you're using that. And in terms of visiting properties, you do that on a daily or weekly basis?
Yes, so depending on the management agreement, some sites are monthly visits, some are biannual
Mm.
visits, some are more frequent than that. So yes, we have another system that we go around, take pictures, and we have a back end system called Dwellant, which essentially brings the resident engagement together with
Yeah.
compliance and all other aspects. So, and also site visits. So you just go around, you can take pictures and raise tasks on your phone immediately and send notifications. So it's quite handy, and again, it's something that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I love going to site visits, or even to Tendon nowadays, because it's becoming a bit more rare and rare. But because we talked about um, these situations where we actually have a lot of leaseholders, owners that do not live in the building. So for AGMs, it's quite difficult. Is obviously you guys manage thousands of units. Is that the case where a lot of AGMs will be on Teams?
Personally, within my portfolio, we I would say it's mostly in person. The sites that I manage, there's a lot of owners living within their properties. And personally, in general, I prefer to do things in person. I think
Yeah.
you just get, because most of our communication is body language. So the further removed you are from actually in person, the more you get lost in translation. I think maybe 15% of my portfolio is AGMs are online.
What type of buildings you manage that are kind of favorite, or you prefer, or you find them, because most of the buildings that are built nowadays are very modern, right? Modern constructions. So the period and the great listed buildings, estates. Do you have any favorite of that?
In terms of favorite buildings, I don't really have favorite buildings. I think one of the things that retains me in this industry is that I feel that property management is more about people than buildings. Though there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of legislation and things that you need to be aware of. But I think what I enjoy most are the people that I interact with. So going to site, meeting the leaseholders, meeting the residents, engaging with clients, um, building trust, ticking off items. So in terms of which would be my favorite style, I'm not sure if I'm honest.
Oh, okay, no problem. Um, in terms of your interaction with leaseholders, how do you manage the relationship? Because it seems like you are on it. How do you interact in best possible way when there are disputes, for example, or they are reporting neighborly disputes? And what's your approach on that?
I think in order to make disputes the easiest to handle, the first step always must be empathy. I think
Mm.
if you don't demonstrate empathy, people get defensive. And when people get defensive, you can't really have rational conversations or come to um, well-reasoned conclusions. So I think from my experience, I'm thinking of one specific individual where the client reported to me that there's one leaseholder who, rather than taking his bin downstairs and putting it in the bin room, he's taking it from his flat and leaving it in the stairwell. And we discovered who it was because the client decided to open up the bin and look through and saw like a letter there, and it said their address essentially, and
Yeah.
he confronted the leaseholder, and it didn't go very well. The leaseholder was very defensive, and then there was other situations with the same leaseholder who was having negative interactions with the 24-hour security, and he came and reached out to me and was making complaints. And in the back of my mind, the security has reported him to me, the client has reported him to me, and he seems like a very unreasonable person and is very easily defensive. But from my perspective, I think empathy was also the first point of call. Okay, I don't agree with where you're coming from. I don't endorse where you're coming from, but I can say, okay, I can see why you're saying what you're saying. And generally speaking, if you demonstrate empathy, even if the solution isn't what the leaseholder wants, and you walk them through your decision making, they generally understand. Apart from when it comes to money, if it comes to, for example, this is how much I should have paid, um, and this is how much you're demanding from me, I think those discrepancies can always uh, be more difficult to resolve. But I think the same principles still apply.
Yeah, I do find I do agree with you. Um, do you recall in your obviously you've been in the industry for a few years, but I'm sure you have come across some situations whether worse or funnier from what you just mentioned. I'll take you back a few, some time, and just think of a scenario where it was difficult to resolve, or um, anything that come across your mind.
Difficult to there's so many things that are difficult to resolve. I think
It's always a story that you will remember, or at least one or two.
so. What I'm working through presently is a replacement of a boiler in a property in Chelsea. It's a communal
Mm.
boiler, and when I inherited the site, they were they were spending thousands of pounds a year to maintain this oil boiler. So every few weeks they need to get oil delivered in the winter, and every few months there's another reason to spend 3, 4, 5,000 pounds on maintaining it. And when I got a M&E consultant in to actually review what is wrong, he came back and said this boiler is between 60 to 80 years beyond its life
Yeah.
expectancy. So that means it was there for 30 years, and then 60 to 80 years later it's still being used. And for some reason, there was no reserve being built towards replacing this. And it's we've gone through the Section 20 process, and there's been a lot of disputes amongst the board. The board has changed while we're discussing these things, with people going out and people coming in with different ideas. We've gone from, okay, let's do uh, individual heating in each flat, which the lease doesn't allow for, because the lease says the landlord must provide communal heating. And
Yep.
so we've gone back and forth in different ways to try and come to a solution. And the costs are quite exorbitant because they haven't actually built a reserve towards it. So I think, and then one of the new clients who've come on, one of the new directors who have come on, has kind of questioned all the decisions that have been made in the past. Should we even pay for the M&E consultant for the work that he's done? is it in writing
Yeah.
that we instructed him? So just having varying people from different backgrounds and perspectives and trying to come to decisions that we can all agree on or have a majority, I think that can often be a problem. Again, especially when it comes to money. Some people have this as an investment, some people live there, and having these unexpected bills it's not something that people hope for and what steers a lot of people away from leasehold in general. So I think that's the main problem in leasehold management when there's a unforeseen problem that's gonna cost a lot of money.
Funny you say that. I'm currently also dealing with something like that, and the
Mm,
boiler again, the heating system needs replacing, and it hasn't been replaced. I don't think ever been replaced. This is actually the original, and the issue is very much from what you just said that sometimes residents think that this will last forever, but actually it isn't. So I might email you and ask you for the consultants, because I'm actually currently looking for consultants to work with, because even the engineers that may be able to replace it, they need it's kind of like, working with any issues that are structural, or you will need a surveyor, and you can't just get the builders in because they want the schedule, the specifications of works. Same as the boiler, and yes, it is very costly, and there is nothing in the fund. There is at the back of my mind that there was a disagreement that because some of the flats are fairly small, they have narrow they some of the flats are fairly small and they don't have space for a boiler. So obviously they're using the communal heating, but some flats do have boilers.
mm,
So back, like few years back, they've had this agreement that whoever has a boiler in their flat will not be paying towards this and that. And now, because we are saying, well, in the past few months, since December, we've spent a significant amount of money to send the maintenance contractor in, but they're unable to resolve the issue because it's bigger than just a maintenance. It's time to replace a system that is 60 years old, if not even more. So similar to what you are dealing
mm.
with, and I've actually had a consultancy firm that politely declined because it's a very complex job. You
Okay.
need to you need access to all properties. Some leaseholders emailed to say that they have their own boiler, so they're basically not interested in this. As you mentioned earlier, the lease, it has to be varied, but then you also have properties that cannot physically have, a boiler in the flat, and then explaining that the system goes through the building. You can't just cut it from flat 10 and flat 6 or 9
This sounds
because
very
yeah,
complicated.
this is the understanding of some people, some of the owners.
I think that's very important. I had another job that I was working on where they had engineers working on site, and what they were doing was not compliant, but they weren't being overseen by a consultant. So the the area that and they were falling foul of building regulations because their expertise is piping and boilers and stuff like that. If you don't have somebody overseeing the work, someone designing the work, you can fall
Yeah.
into a lot of problems. And so I think it's very important to have the right people in place because sometimes you do something and if it needs to be undone, you're paying twice. And yeah, that can be a problem.
And it's fairly bigger block where we have um, a very small amount of directors that, well, actually, it's only one director that is interested in kind of, the the updates on this. But again, um, with busy schedules, personal um, engagements is difficult to to kind of stay ticking up, and at the end of the day, it's not just one director's decision. So I've been sending a lot of updates on this on this job, but yeah, so far it's been a little silent on the other side. So I'm hoping to push through with engaging a consultant who can work with me on this project. So yeah, like I said, maybe I'll contact you also and see how it goes, because winter is going to come very quickly, and then there will be
Yes.
no.
Yes.
And then how do you deal with that? And as you said, it's extortionate amount of money to resolve this issue, but it has to be done. I mean, the whole thing is very complex. Even I've never dealt with anything to such such extent. So for me, I'm learning, to be
Yes.
honest.
That, something I've been reflecting on this week, is because I'm trying to become a member of RICS, and in RICS you need to put forward a case study, and
It's your post of that, yeah.
I think this, because of the varying levels of complexities, from the lease, from the actual appointment of contractors, there's just so many resident engagement. There's just so many elements of advising, of applied knowledge, of understanding things that we as property managers can demonstrate in such a situation. And it's been a learning process for myself as well, because there's so many things that you don't consider until you have to. But yeah, I think these things grow us. I think when we face these things, it becomes a situation where, okay, now when someone else faces a similar problem, you can streamline for them. This is what you need to do. This is the person who helped me, and it makes our job easier. And I think this is also the importance of networking, because there's a vast array
Yes.
of knowledge in the industry, in people's minds, but if you don't speak to them, you can make those mistakes that they could save you from.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep everyone, up to date with the project, but again, sometimes it's just silent on the other side, so it's very difficult to engage and to make it, because we don't make decisions, right? But yeah, Section 20 is on enrolling, and then I just need a consultant to kind of work with me. So we're gonna work on these projects
Yes,
together, learn
no
from each
worries,
other.
no worries, no worries. Sounds
Yeah,
great.
it's funny. It's funny you said that. Um, what is your because we're talking about challenges. What are the challenges that you face in general in this job?
I think I think the biggest challenge is managing one's time and managing expectations. Every client that you work with, every leaseholder that you work with, every subtenant that you work with, they don't understand the complexity of our job and the
Mm.
workload that we have. But as an estate agent for many years, selling many properties, oftentimes I needed to interact with property managers, and the responses were so delayed. I was like, these guys don't do any work. You chase them 3 or 4 times. That was my perspective and perception. Like, you chase them three or
Yeah,
four
yeah.
times, you need to call them, you need to check, you need to, like, I don't want to be rude, but
All
I
the
would say
time.
they were worse than solicitors in terms of having to chase. And now on the other side, and sometimes I get the third email from my conveyancing team saying I need responses to these inquiries. I understand now
Yeah.
that there's so many matters in our industry that if we miss it, we're liable. Oh, somebody fell. We didn't do our site inspection. Oh, this was raised in the health and safety risk report. We didn't action it. Oh, this compliance thing that was meant to happen 6 months ago hasn't happened. We've missed it. Somebody's drunk water and they got sick. There's so many contending responsibilities with high liability that we need to remember, contend with, action, schedule, that the leaseholder who his leak is sinking, why didn't you return my call? Why didn't you respond to my email within 20 minutes? They don't understand it. And I think the biggest challenge for me is being able to explain to people what the work is. Because when I have that conversation with them, there is an understanding. But I think we aren't messaging as an industry to the leaseholders the level of responsibility that we have. And I think what is downstream from that is because people don't understand that we can't actually charge the management fee necessary to give people the time that they need, because obviously
Mm.
management fee and the time we can allocate to each building go hand in hand. And if people just think we're just paying invoices, that's all our job, then they're not going to be willing to pay what is required to allocate the time that they need to the block. So I think messaging is so important. This is something that I'm working on with my clientele, is trying to message, this is what I'm doing, this is how much time it takes, and for me to actually allocate blocks to other people, I need to justify the management fee. So I think
Yeah.
for me, just messaging, helping people understand that, okay, what you feel like is urgent to you, but in the
Mm.
level of urgency in my priority list, it's not at the top. And here's why. This is what, did you know last week
Mm.
there was a fire and I'm relocating people? Did you know that last week that this was happening? And just trying to educate people in the full scope of what we're doing day to day actually helps people understand and helps people that I work with understand that, okay, because I've met Darren, I know he's passionate, I know he cares. So if he doesn't respond the same day, I know why. And when he apologizes, because of the rapport that we built, I take it at face value. So I think that is probably one of the biggest problems I face, but I think it's something that we also face as an industry.
But I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult to keep informed everyone, or like just give a call to everyone to basically extend apologies, or like, to explain why you are not available to deal with their matter, because you are dealing with something else that is quite urgent, because we need to prioritize, right? And now, coming from a lettings agent to a block manager, you can see now the difference of, and
Definitely.
it's a completely different task. And I find difficult, and we kind of have this how do you say, like a response time that we try anything 3 to 5 working days. If you've not been able to respond to that person, you email them and just say, I'm dealing with something else, but I'll come back to you. And that is a nice apology, but it is also true, right? Because you can't call everyone, because the call will take 15 minutes, and just responding with that line, it takes
Mm.
seconds. Um, and then every day there is something urgent than the one that you, and the priority kind of moves to something else. So I find this very challenging. And you also mentioned something about the management fee, but the management fee is not just mine and yours as a property
Of
managers.
course.
There are really things involved in the management fee, right?
Yes, of course. I think the whole back-end system, for example, of my organization, we've got a whole team for accounting, finance, compliance, customer service, everything. The whole operation is a large-scale operation to make things
Yeah.
streamlined and simple for the end user. And if we're not able to, but a lot of clients that I deal with, they've been customers of my company for a long time, but it's never been articulated to them the level of work
Yeah.
that is done to maintain the building at a level that is compliant and keeps them happy and keeps the building in to keep the building in a state that is worthy of the money that they're paying. I think also messaging is so poor in our industry that a lot of people I speak to don't understand that not 100% of the service charge goes into my pocket, right? I paid all this service charge. Why didn't you respond to my email? And it's like there's a difference between service charge and management fee. But every day I run into people who don't understand the difference. It's never been explained to them. And I think that is also a hurdle in people's patience. They think that everything that they're paying is going to Darren. And if Darren doesn't respond to my email, I'm not going to pay anymore because Darren, you got all this money. What are you doing with it?
Yeah. That's very often when you hear, I'm not paying my service charge because you haven't done this. And sometimes it's just something, you know, insignificant.
Mm,
If you look at what you're actually dealing with in the property, and sometimes it's also because it could involve someone else in the building where you can't disclose information because it
mm-hmm.
could be sensitive matter. So that also is a challenge. But yeah, how do you deal with that? It's like, it's, I can't tell you why. So you've got to basically look bad because you can't say what you actually are working on. You've mentioned compliance in terms of the health and safety. So that's another topic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why there is a high churn in this industry is actually because of the amount of new legislation that is coming and is expected to come in. And also, there's also talk of it becoming a regulated industry. But I think there is so much you need to keep on top on. There is so much CPD that you need to be doing just to be aware of things. And if you don't, it's like, okay, well, did you know that your building is higher than 11 meters? So you need to be doing quarterly fire door checks on the communal doors. Oh, I didn't know that. And if there is a fire and you weren't doing it, who's in trouble? We're meant to be advising the client of this. The client says, "Oh, my property manager didn't tell me." So there's so much that we need to keep on top of that it does make it spinning plates essentially. But I think there is a reward in having good systems, having good technology, and having good handovers that allow us to do our jobs more easily.
I totally agree, but these technology and policies that you build within the company, or someone else, not particularly you and I, but they take time, right? So and the softwares as well that you may use, they are costly. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration with the management fees. And I think only maybe this year there is like a significant jump in management fee just because we as property managers are getting involved in so many different aspects in the industry where we are expected to know of everything, as you said. Compliance is obviously and it's hot topic. um high risk buildings, I think majority of managing agents in UK have high risk buildings, and there is a lot to be done. It's a lot to be done. It's a lot for us to understand what we need to do as property managers. And obviously you work for a big managing agent, but you have all these policies done. For us, it does take a lot because on the day to day you have the 200 emails that you need to respond to, maybe 20 of them are priority and urgent, and they've got to be dealt with now. And then so it's not a 9 to 5 job.
Yes, there are. I enjoy my work, so I'm a bit of an outlier where I enjoy because essentially if a client or leaseholder sees that you're going above and beyond, they show a unique appreciation to that, and so I enjoy doing that. But for some people, there's a lot of sinking, there's a lot of drowning. It's okay, well, right now because of churn, two people are not here, so everybody has to have more blocks. So you don't have more time for your actual portfolio. So you can't do the work that you need to do. So in the next board meeting, the clients are complaining and saying that you're rubbish, and then you feel bad. You can't point fingers at anybody, so you take the blame, and you can actually become depressed. I've seen property managers like in tears from some of the meetings that they've had, and oftentimes it's because of things beyond their control. So it is a hard industry to be in, and I feel like the people who survive need to actually get like some armor so they don't take things personally because it can be difficult, and I think
Yeah.
there is a lot of expectation on us.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of property managers do take their job seriously and personal sometimes, because empathy comes with, being personal to someone, because, if you don't care, you don't care. But, if if you're going to be an asshole, you shouldn't be in this industry. No,
Mm,
exactly that is true. So you've got to have heart and, understand that, you know, someone who is at age and, is not in line with technology, for example, they need to understand that, maybe you've sent them an email, but they will call or they will expect your call when you've sent emails from softwares and so on, and they don't get it. And, sometimes you have to send them letters and it takes time for them to receive that. So, that obviously is for us to, we understand that not everyone is okay with technology and receiving that. So you will call, you will be personal, you will have the empathy, and all of that is part of, it's actually a fraction of what we do, because there is so much that we do. But how do we change that? How do we change that in terms of being understood? And also, you've mentioned that there are a lot of property managers leaving the industry, whether because they felt bullied or high pressure, from the task or the block they manage or the job in general. What's your view on, like, how do you think we can change that?
I think first and foremost, I think channels like this, things like this, is the starting point where we have conversations about what is going on in our industry, and people can say, "Oh, it's not just me. It's not just my office. It's industry wide." And as we begin to have these conversations and realize the difficulty, we so for example, there is the TPI service charge index, which I think looked over a period of 5 years to see how service charge has increased and in line with inflation. And I think one of the only metrics on there that didn't go up in line with inflation, which was underneath inflation, was the management fee. And I think ultimately, if we can't if there is not messaging on, we want to provide a service for you, and it's not just a service, it's not a commodity, it's not get the cheapest. Some things you can get the cheapest, but with looking after your home or your something that is one of your biggest investments, you need quality, and quality isn't cheap. And I think there is maybe a competitiveness in the market that makes what we do a commodity. And I think if we are working in tandem and messaging, we're actually trying to provide you a bespoke service that serves your needs and meets the standards that you require, then it's not going to be at a commodity price. It's going to be at a price that is understandable and makes sense, but provides a quality service. So I think it's first and foremost messaging. It's about having those communications with leaseholders and clients about the work that we do, not just because obviously we're so busy, so we're trying to tick off things on our priority list. But I think one of the most highly leveraged things we can do is message what are we doing, because it's not just about doing the work; it's about advocating for ourselves. And when the because there's a lot of press, right? There's a lot of bad press. Oh, the service charge are going up, cowboy managing agents, but
Yeah.
there is no strong counteracting voice to demonstrate what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think if we're articulating that and people are hearing those messages, they'll be more willing and understanding of paying us a fee that actually allows us the time that is needed to meet their needs and respond uh, competently and accurately.
The task. And they actually, at the recent TPI conference, they talked about the age of buildings. So anything from 50 to 60 years, they will require a lot of maintenance than ever. So that is something that I've heard a few months ago, and they've mentioned it on the latest one, and it was interesting because it's they are buildings where they don't have the funds, in different regions, or whether in London or outside, where they would not have the funds to maintain these buildings.
We're talking about the age of buildings and how we're anticipating the costs of maintaining things to go up significantly in the next few years.
Yeah, and I think that is very challenging time for a lot of buildings in UK in general, where it's it will be a problem for us, because the expectation for you as a property manager of this block is to provide, let's say, a reasonable timeline of what you're going to do in the next 12 months of. So yeah, I think the next few years will be challenging, and especially with high-rise buildings and what we need to do in terms of building being compliant, because that is the first thing we do. Insurances. I've had someone on the podcast that we talked about insurance, escape of water, and this is something that it's increasing and increasing by the day. So the first thing we need to do is insure the property, and the second thing, or maybe hand in hand they go, to make sure that it's compliant, and that these two are costly. Our management fee is somewhere at the bottom, right? So is that something that you kind of also think of, and how are you going to manage buildings where this will become an issue?
In response to what you're saying, I would say that communication is so important. Proactive transparency is so important. So I think having surveyors on board who are drawing up capital expenditure plans, not just documentation, but leading board meetings, leading AGMs, not leading, but being involved in leaseholder meetings, so that these things can be articulated. Because I've had it in time past where somebody has sat through an explanation of the capex plan and said, okay, well, I just need to sell, I need to move, and they've done that, and the new buyer has factored that into the cost of into the cost of purchasing the property. So I think transparency, proactivity is most important. We can't do everything, right? If there's £1 million capital expenditure that needs to go out in the next 12 months, it's not our money. We can't find that money. We can only do our best to help, mitigate it the best we can, or spread works over a longer period of time if possible. And we can't save the day. We can't always be the heroes, but if we can articulate proactively, transparently, with reasoned logic and with the right experts, then we're doing the best we can with what we have.
I think we're a little far from being heroes in this industry. But and in terms of going back to maybe a scenario that you kind of dealt with either at AGM, or because I've had guests on the podcast where we talked about fires, we talked about a whole building collapsing. And have you had anything extreme such this?
I've taken over a unit that had recently had a fire. So it was a block of 6 flats above a restaurant, and the restaurant was being renovated, and the people who owned the restaurant wanted to change the roof, and they were using hot works essentially on the roof, which essentially caught fire and spread across the building, and the fire brigade had to be called, and flats needed to be broken into, and there was long-standing damage to, and just a smell in the building, which went through complicated insurance claims. So I was working closely with the previous property manager to oversee that. They did most of the work on that, most of the heavy lifting, but there was a lot of resident engagement that was required. And I think, generally speaking, on every given day, there is at least one or half of a urgent task that gets raised on the desk that needs to be dealt with. And I think that's just part and parcel of the job that we do, or the job that we chose, or we're stuck with in some cases.
And what was your involvement with that unit where they had
So
a fire?
most of it was resident engagement, updating the leaseholders as to what's happening, when are the insurance valuers coming round, when is the works taking place, if they're going to be relocated. In this case, they weren't, but just keeping them up to date with everything that's going on, essentially.
So that everyone in the building
everyone. So in terms of most of the damage was done to the windows, so those needed to be repaired, but it wasn't deemed necessary to relocate them.
Well, some of the stories where they had to relocate a whole building. There are a lot of fires happening.
Yes,
Um, the,
there's a colleague of mine in another office who, in the last 2 years or 3 years, have dealt with 6 fires. Yes.
what? Caused by
Well,
what?
there is a running joke that they're causing it, but obviously that's just a joke.
In the
No,
same
no,
building,
in different buildings. Yeah.
causing it for the reasons of they were looking to do renovation works.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the details, but it's just funny that in one area of one neck of the woods that it's happening quite frequently.
Yeah, that's a lot. Six. I don't think I've ever had a fire in in my
Okay,
career that I had to
okay, you
deal
say
with.
that now. Let's hope that remains the same.
Oh no, I fixed it. Yes, now I'm gonna get a. Oh no, oh no, no, no. I do not wish for any of our buildings to catch fire. And in terms of again, just going back because I can see that the communication. It's we talked about it, and it's I do agree. It's really important. What would you what would you say to someone who is struggling to maintain this, and what is the best practice that you kind of do on daily basis to keep this communications
Uh,
on
uh,
top of
I think fundamentally ownership is important. So if you make a mistake or if you don't get back to somebody, or if somebody is disappointed, accepting responsibility quickly, not being defensive. The more defensive you are, the more adversarial the relationship gets, and the more short fused somebody becomes. When somebody holds their hands up and apologizes or takes responsibility, it creates endearment. So doing that quickly is important. I think also meeting people in person is important. So it's not a policy that
yeah.
I demand, but I make the suggestion to the property managers who are looking up to me that when you have an opportunity to meet somebody in person, try and take it at least once. When I have board meetings, I try and attend in person, even if there's an option to go online. And I actually try and stay after the conduction of business for an additional 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just to have a personal conversation with people, because I think that builds
Okay.
rapport. And once somebody gets to know you a little bit and you get to know them a little bit beyond just the scope of the building, there's a greater level of patience and understanding that they have with you. So I think those things are also important, and that's what springs to mind. And I think just holding your hands up if you're going to have a very rough week in the next 2 weeks because of X, Y, and Z. Just saying, just a heads up, I'm going underwater for 2 weeks, but I'm thinking of you. Give me a call if it's urgent, and I will get back to you. And just following through. If you say something, you need to do it. And if you can't, you need to actually admit it early because having to be chased erodes trust. Having to always be asked questions before information is divulged damages relationships. So being proactive, being transparent, uh, ownership, uh, building rapport by having just relationships with individuals is helpful and it goes a long way, I feel.
which is which is a little broken at the moment, and we are trying to
Mm,
mend, right? Because that's the aim of I think property
mm,
management and leaseholders. It is something that we need to work on, and we are working on. We're doing our best, and in at work, as obviously you are a senior property manager, you work with you have like a junior or a admin person that helps you with
yeah, so
tasks.
we have a PMA team. There's so raising work orders, appointing contractors. They actually have a handbook that was produced by another senior here about some of the basic things that come across the desk each day, like kind of like a diagram, what to do when somebody calls about water ingress, what questions to ask, how to find out what to.
That's
Yeah,
good.
it's a very good document, and it just helps take things off our plate. In terms of my role, there's a couple of property managers who are newer to the industry who ask questions about technical things and just advice on, okay, who is the best person to do this? one of the first things I did when I joined the company was I sat everybody down and said, okay, who is the best contractor that does X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
And some of the names were reoccurring, and those are the names that I just went to, and I can see why those names were reoccurring. So for example, you spoke
Mm.
about having an M&E consultant, having those right people. I have a
Mm.
cleaner that anytime there's a problem at one of my blocks with the old cleaner, I fire them and hire this one, and I always get good
Yeah.
reports. So it's just very simple that I have people in the book because generally I try and have a standard of excellence. And once I find somebody who does excellent work, you don't need to worry. So then it's like it's a synergistic
Yeah.
relationship. I'm giving you more business, but you're taking the stress off. As soon
I,
as I point you somewhere, there's no stress. It just makes life easy.
mm, yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of helps your workload as well,
100%.
because if you can trust the contractor, then obviously you you're more confident of passing on information to your clients in terms of the job is done, the job will be done, or if you require maybe a picture because someone reported something and you are not available to attend, because we don't attend every day, we don't attend even
Mm,
every month, and sometimes obviously that is a really good thing that you have at work, where an admin or a junior property manager can look at that structure of how, if someone reports something to them, because I I had some difficult times when, because I'm me and the way I work is the way I work, and I have had expectations that someone I work with, such a junior or admin person, they will work the same way as I do, which obviously is not the case. So we can adapt to each other's work, but that's quite challenging, right? Because especially when they are young in the industry, they not necessarily know all the quirks of this job, and how do you tackle and handle. And going back to what you said at the very beginning, is that you've got to be on top of everything and make sure you're compliant, because otherwise you can be sued for everything, right? How do you work with the teams, in terms of, because you are a person who has high expectations in the job, so how do you work with them to achieve
I think
that?
um, as a parent, I think I replicate the model that I do in parenting. You need to be you need to demonstrate a high level of gratitude when you're seeing the things you want to see,
Mm.
and you need to be quick to point out things that you want varied in a positive way. So for me, I always try and find ways to say thank you, right? You might be doing your job, but if you do it to the standard that I desire and I like, it's not just going to be a thank you sometimes. Sometimes I'm going to say, I want to buy you lunch.
Understand.
I want to get you a hot chocolate. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to send you a Teams message. I want to I want to talk about you positively to other people and how you've done something. So I think it's a lot of it is positive reinforcement because everybody likes to feel valued, cherished, and appreciated. And the more you do that, the more people, it's a positive feedback loop again. So I think that's my main tool to get, and it's also helping people understand why I'm asking them to do things, right? A lot of times when you're coming in at a junior level or at an assistant level, you don't understand the second order consequences. You don't understand if you don't do this, then this will happen, and then this will happen. But taking the time to explain. So, for example, we have somebody who's maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the job, and they haven't really been coming from a property management. Oh, sorry, from a property management perspective as an assistant, and I was just. Uh, I celebrated because I got a budget approved today, and she was like, "What are you celebrating?" And I asked you, "Do you know about budgeting?" She didn't, so I explained it. I explained how essentially everything is based upon this. Like to have money in the account, there needs to be a budget that's gone out. So she now understands the background work to it, right? So when it comes to if she wants to progress in this industry, she has clues as to this needs to be done because it impacts X, Y, and Z. So if they understand the why, I think most of motivation isn't about what you do, or how you do it. It's mostly about why you do it. once you articulate to people
Yeah.
why you do things, they could be more motivated to do things well.
I think it's very important what you mentioned about the budgets, because we have few buildings where they like to do it 6 months after actually the date. So we end up with no money sometimes, and everything goes a bit messy, right? So I think it's very important to. So it it is something that you celebrate as a property manager.
Yeah, this one had a lot of questions. I had to go through a lot of documents. I had to do a lot of investigatory work to get it across the line. So I was very happy to say that, to see the email to say, yes, let's do it.
Absolutely. Darren, what's the best advice that you have received from someone since you entered this industry?
Read the lease. I have seen people go a long way doing things and making plans and spending money only to realize that under the lease you can't even do that. So I think that's the most basic one. In interviews, that's the question we ask to stump people. What would you do in this scenario? And as a Christian, there are sometimes the often answer to a lot of questions is Jesus or the Bible. And similarly, I think in property management, oftentimes the first answer to any question is, what does the lease say about this? And going from there. And in terms of mentorship, I think mentorship is so important. Having somebody who is further along in the journey just speeds up your learning. And in my office, the head of property management, because I'm in the Holborn office, is Nick, and he's been the person who's answered so many questions and just made things so much easier to understand, and just to pick his brain on in situations that I haven't crossed before. So I think mentorship is important in all walks of life, because sometimes it's better to learn from the mistakes of others and the wisdom of others rather than having to make the mistake yourself. So I think it's so important to have.
Someone, yeah, absolutely. And I'm a bit jealous because I never had that one person. So, but I will welcome anyone if if anyone would like to be my mentor moving forward. I'm happy to, I think it's very important, and I definitely believe that I would have succeeded in better ways as a property manager if I definitely had someone that I could have reached out to. Um, it's very similarly like you. I was working in lettings and then property management, and I kind of moved to sales as well at some point. And then I came across the LP1 forms and working with block managers. And I kind of thought, I'm so fed up listening about broken, dishwashers and washing machines and so on. So I kind of entered, block management, and I worked in a company where for a few years where I was the only property manager,
Oh
and
wow.
I had no clue of what I was doing for the first few years. I didn't know about RIPM at that time. There were no forums to look at and to read from. They were all dated, and there is nothing that I could have gone to. And the networking also, it's so important. And I love going to networking events now because I just meet all these amazing people that are in the industry, and I've entered too. So yeah, if you can grab yourself a mentor, by all means do, and don't let them go, because it is important to have someone. And I think a lot of people will be happy to be there and to support you. So
Yeah, I agree.
I
Yeah,
think,
I agree. I think a lot of people are willing and ready to share wisdom, but then a lot of people are afraid to come across as arrogant or put their foot out of place. So I think is really on the person who wants to be mentored to seek out somebody, because a lot of people are busy, but they'll make time for you if they see that you're hungry to
yeah,
learn. So I think the onus is on the person who wants a mentor to step out and do it, look for it. And I think platforms like LinkedIn is a great platform to actually meet people who are in your industry doing things that you wish to be doing. So yeah, I would say make yourself available to those platforms, put yourself out there, step into your uncomfortable zone, and you'll actually see great results.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to say I don't know or I don't know how to do,
That's a great that would be my
right?
second piece of advice that was very helpful to me. When you don't know, don't pretend like you do, because that will cause more problems down the line. When you can hold your hand up and say, I don't know, but I'll find out for you, that makes people trust you, because there are wafflers. Like, there are people who talk a good talk, but they can't produce results. But if you're the person who says, I don't know, but I'll find out for you, it also builds trust.
Yeah, we need more property managers that are hungry to come into this industry, that it's ever evolving and there is so much to learn from. And there are different niches that you can go into, in property management. So, and now the bigger the companies are, or even, medium, um, you have like different departments where, you enter, whether it's insurance claims, whether it's fire risk assessments, and then you compliance and so on. So there are different niches where you can get yourself, into. So obviously you start as an admin and you just make your way out up there. But yeah, great advice also on the LinkedIn, because it's a great platform where you can just follow someone and keep an eye on, like I followed you and, your posts. So that's what we need. We need to make a little difference.
Indeed.
And yeah. And on that note, everything we talked about, I think it will definitely make a difference in someone's journey in block management. And I thank you for being my
Thank you
guest.
for having me. I appreciate your time.